Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series. Hey everyone, welcome to the brand new episode of the Figure It Out cast. This is episode 9 for February 2017. I am your host, Adam Koralik, and I am here joined by Chip Senkbeil. Hi Chip, how you doing?
I am doing great. I am preparing to make some cashew and macadamia nut cream sauce, which is fantastic.
Wow, that sounds kind of intense.
It's actually really, really easy. You just soak them in water for a couple of hours and you blend them.
That's more work than not doing that, though.
That's very true. I can't argue with that, but it is delicious.
Yeah. So you see the problem, because I wouldn't do that. Aside from that, what else have you been doing, man?
Oh, let's see. So, still doing grad work, still having a full-time job, writing code, and what else have I been doing? I've been doing a little bit of 3D modeling. That's been an interesting adventure.
Really?
Yeah, just kind of learning how to use Blender a little bit, and then and a separate project on learning how to use Autodesk Fusion 360. So two different tools for two different purposes.
Is this ultimately to like make games or something like that?
One is not. So Blender is, yes. The Autodesk Fusion 360 is for me, it's going to be a bit of 3D printing and potentially some. I believe I can also do laser cutting with it and some other things.
Oh shit!
You can basically just take these 3D models or little layouts and generate a variety of outputs that go to different devices. So learning how to do that stuff.
Yeah, and using lasers.
The laser part comes next. I got to actually learn how to use the laser cutter.
It's kind of interesting timing for you to be talking about that because by the time most people hear this podcast, I will have gone in for laser corrective treatment on my eyes. So I'm going to have fucking lasers in my eyes to like upgrade my vision.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. You didn't ever do that, did you?
No, although I might have to one day. I can tell that my right eye is getting a bit out of sync with the left one.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I did it once in 2010. I used to wear glasses, and then in like 2010, I had laser corrective surgery. It's one of the weirdest things ever because you're looking at like a light or like a little metal thing, whatever. And they, as far as you can tell, because your eyes are all numbed and stuff, they turn on a light, and all of a sudden your eye comes into focus, just like a camera ring turning. It's so weird.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that again.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine that got a corrective surgery, and he's definitely been... Actually, I've had multiple people, now that I think about it, that have had that.
Yeah, it's much more common than it used to be.
Yeah, it's probably 'cause it's gotten more cost-effective than it used to be, too.
Definitely, and more people are capable of doing it. I mean, like, the doctors, anyway.
Yeah, and then, there's also the whole discussion about how our generation, our eyesight is a lot worse, right? This is all the technology and screens we stare at. It tends to weigh down our eyes.
That's entirely possible, yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's what one of my coworkers, who's in his early 30s, he was told by a doctor, you're going to start wearing glasses because literally you have the eyes of like a 50-year-old because they've been worn down so much.
Wow.
So if you can, stop staring at screens as much. Use ebook readers that are e-ink displays or read actual books and go outside and frolic and be happy.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I tell you what, this podcast, just listen to it while like looking at a magazine or something. Don't try to watch the screen.
Exactly.
That'll help.
So
we're heroes, Chip. We saved them.
Well, someone was commenting about the background image we had for the last episode, which I think is just you looking at me like I'm a nutcase. And they basically said the background image basically discredited every point I was making or something like that, which is pretty funny.
I don't get why they would think that, but no, I do kind of wish we had taken more photos together because I didn't realize that was like the only really like decent photo we had together. Was the one right there in front of the Kennedy Memorial. Yeah,
I'm pretty bad at with pictures. Usually someone has to remind me to take pictures.
Yeah, well, next time I'm down there, we'll take better photos. We'll take more.
That's right. Or when you're in Poland, then we can go do it there.
I'm not going to Poland.
Maybe you will. Maybe you'll surprise me. It'll be my little surprise from you.
That would have to be your surprise to me because I don't have tickets.
So you say.
So are you cool with talking about you going to Poland?
Yeah, I mean, it's already public knowledge, so.
Okay, well, Chip's going to Poland, and I would love to go with him, but, it's expensive for both of us. Although it's cheaper for me. I mean, flying from Chicago out to, like, Warsaw, nowhere near as expensive for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't know. This magicalness of Chicago, I guess.
Yeah, being the big central airport hub has many advantages. Though I never advise changing planes here. I'm told it's a nightmare. But when you actually live here, it's got pluses.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'll take your
Anything
word for
else
it.
going on with you this month?
Oh, let's see. I had spoken with a friend of mine. We might try to do the Ludum Dare stuff, which happens in April, I think.
I do not know what that is.
Ludum Dare? I probably am not pronouncing it correctly, but it's basically... do you know what the Global Game Jam is?
No.
Okay, so both of those are centered around people that are game developers or people that want to develop games, basically having 48-hour competitions to make games. And then they put them online and they get voted on, and that's basically it. I've never done Ludum Dare. Apparently there are different versions of Ludum Dare. Some that are single person only, some that are multiple people on a team, and they have different rules such as starting from scratch. They might give you a theme. Actually, I don't know if Ludum Dare gives you a theme. I know Global Game Jam gives you a theme. Like one year they had the it's the sign for like infinity. It's like the snake eating its tail or whatever.
The figure eight deal.
Yeah, basically, or something like that. But so that was like one of the themes one year. So we had like a game where you basically kept coming back to life and you couldn't die, but the problem is you're trying to die in the game, so you're trying to like fight the fact that you kept coming back to life. But anyway, so I might give that a shot in April. You know, just gives you a kick in the butt to try to actually make something instead of talking about it.
All right, man. Well, good luck.
Yeah, you'll probably be the centerpiece. Just kidding.
Thank you, I guess. All right, well, as far as I know, not much else is going on with me in February, so maybe we'll just move on to our first subject. You ready?
Are you not traveling anywhere in February?
Well, at the time we record this, which is at the very end of January, I have nothing concrete, but it's always possible that stuff springs up. A lot of the stuff where I have to go here or there, I'm only told like 2 weeks beforehand.
Gotcha.
So you never know. But other than that, yeah, I guess we'll just move on. Our first subject comes from me. I picked this. Yay for me.
Yay for Adam.
All right, so obviously the hot button thing that's been going on in gaming lately is the upcoming Nintendo Switch, which at the time most people are hearing this is only a few days away, which is kind of weird to think about considering when we're recording this. But Nintendo has revealed a lot of information about the Switch. We now know more about the console itself and the launch titles and all that stuff. Given that we now have more information, has your position on the console or your interest in the console gone up, gone down, stayed the same? What do you think about it?
Well, one of the things I remember in the news was that the number of launch titles has grown, but the new launch titles are essentially very old games. Like I think they have, what was that game called? You basically controlled a flame that you basically burn things to stay warm.
Oh, Binding of Isaac?
No. Although maybe that comes... I'd be very surprised if they came to a Switch. But what is it called? It's not Little Flame. Little Inferno. It's like something like that. It's an indie game. But apparently that's... I think it's called Little Inferno. Something Inferno. Where basically you just keep burning things to stay warm, but it's oddly satisfying, and it actually has a more of a plot than you'd expect as you keep going through it. But it's pretty old. I think that came out... I have no idea. 2012 earlier? I really don't remember when that game came out. But so that was interesting to see that there are more launch titles, but of course, to me, they're meaningless because... not the games, it's the fact that it doesn't really mean that, oh, this is going to be the big break for the Switch, because it's not... You don't have any major companies, like unexpected companies coming along. It's still just indie titles and the couple of corporations that said, yeah, we'll make something, and then the risk is, like with the Wii U, they back out after the first half a year or so, right?
It's entirely possible. I can confirm, though, Binding of Isaac is a launch title.
Oh, it is? Okay.
It is.
That is surprising. I was expecting... What is it rated for the Switch?
That I don't know.
Okay. Because that's definitely a departure from their family-friendly...
Oh, wait, it does say M for mature on the artwork, so there you go.
So there you go. So that's interesting. One of their launch titles is an M-rated game, which I'm trying to remember. Has Nintendo had an M-rated game during one of their launches?
During one of their launches, I'm not sure. I mean, on the consoles ever, of course, but
Right, but
I don't know about
the
the launches.
right?
No,
Could be the first one.
possible. I can't confirm that. Somebody
Yeah, I
out there
can't
can.
either. Yeah, I don't know. But if it's not the first, it's not. I would say it's not frequent. I don't think there's been like a M-rated game on each console. Granted, you go far enough back, and then you didn't have the rating system. But,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, the rating
so
system was born during the Super Nintendo.
yeah, so that's interesting.
At least the American rating system. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I don't know. Did they all come out around the same time, or were there older rating systems that existed?
I would.
in other countries?
I think the those various European systems, like the UK system and then the mainland European systems, I think they came about shortly after the American system, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay. Is there a Japanese rating system?
There
There has to
is,
be.
which I also believe came afterwards as well.
Okay, interesting. 'Cause
It's
I
kind of
know-
like a film rating system. Like the MPAA puts all sorts of like, oh, it's R, it's PG-13, etc.
Right.
Same basic concept. Interesting thing. This is not really gaming related, but I wonder if this is also in the case of the gaming industry. In the movie industry, in the United States anyway, we have the MPAA. It's like we're the only country on the planet where the body that gives you a rating system for all the movies is not government organized. It's actually some third-party company that just decided it was the voice of morality, and it would just decide what movies are rated.
Yeah, that is interesting. So wait, so
It's
is that
odd.
the
I'm not
case
saying
with-
it's good or bad. It's just an interesting factoid.
And that's the same with our rating system for video games?
I think that the gaming system is the same thing. I think it's also a company, although I couldn't presume to say that that's also the case with other countries. Like, I don't know if the Japanese government is in control of the Japanese rating system, or if it's the same deal where it's just some company that decided what stuff was rated.
Gotcha.
Yeah, hard to say. But back on subject of the Switch, do you think you're going to get one now? Are you more interested in it?
I'm not more interested in it. I'd
So
say it's about
you're
the
kind of
same.
the same as you were last month then?
Yeah, basically the same. I might get one down the line. I'll probably get one down the line because I like Nintendo stuff. I'll probably get one when I have a couple, maybe a party of friends coming over, and I actually want to have a modern game system for party-like games. Whether it be some Mario-based game or some weird gimmicky game or something, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But in terms of games coming out for the system, especially since I think the Legend of Zelda game's coming out for the Wii U, right?
It is. As far as we know, it's probably the last Wii U title.
By Nintendo or just period?
Well, definitely by Nintendo. They were not secretive about that. But at this point in time, the only other Wii U game that might still be happening is the Darksiders thing. Amazon still has a listing for it. And possibly Bloodstained, that Kickstarter game that was like a Castlevania spiritual successor. But most people are thinking Darksiders will get canceled, and that Bloodstained will probably be canceled and retooled for the Switch.
Gotcha.
Nobody's really sure. Although I wouldn't put it past Ubisoft to put out Just Dance 2018 on there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they put Just Dance 2017 on the original Wii.
Really?
Like, back in November, they released it for that. You can get that game for 3 generations of Nintendo hardware.
Wow.
And I think, although, who knows, unless they did 2018 for the original Wii, I think it's also the last original Wii game.
Huh.
Which would mean that the Wii had games for 11 years.
Which is really odd to think about it, because no one really thinks about the Wii anymore when they think of, oh, what game's coming out, or oh, the indie scene, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Yeah, I'm still baffled that they did that, but those Just Dance games go on everything.
Yeah, well, it's pretty. To be fair, the Wii was the system that got into all of the non-gamer households, right? So
Yeah.
if Grandma comes by and says, "Look what I got for you," it's another dance game, and everyone plays it for all of 2 hours and never plays it again after they dust off their Wii in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was considering getting it just for the simple fact that it's probably the last Wii game, and I was, it's interesting to actually see it available on store shelves at like Best Buy and Target and stuff. They actually have
it's
it there.
available in stores.
Yeah, and you're just like, wow, they really are actually selling this. Like, there's a new Wii game just sitting here.
Where do they put it? Where does it fall?
They put it with all the Wii U stuff, and it just kind of sits there.
So people it's like,
as far as I can tell, it's not a great seller because they all have it, but they all only have like 2 or 3 copies, but they're always there. Nobody seems to be buying it, which I can't blame them. Why the hell would you?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something exclusively for like the collector's market. But the point of that was just to point out that I believe Just Dance 2017 is a Switch launch title. It's one of the like 4 or 5 launch titles.
Well, now they're up to 10. They're up to 10 launch titles.
Say what?
Like, I think the Switch is up to 10 launch titles.
But I'm saying when I say that, I'm talking about physical ones. There might be a bunch of digital ones.
Because that was one of the announcements, right? Was that there are a bunch of these indie games are coming there, but are they not physical then?
As far as I know, no. The ones I'm aware of offhand: 1-2 Switch, ARMS, Legend of Zelda, Just Dance 2017, and now Binding of Isaac. Oh, and Super Bomberman. So that's like 6, right?
Okay, then maybe they.
But I could be, I don't know. I mean, by the time most people hear this, there could be a whole new, wealth of information.
Could be.
I'm not. Yeah, that's all I'm working off of right now. I'm actually like I'm looking at Best Buy and seeing like what they think is going to come out when.
Yeah, they've got. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm actually on the site and looking at their upcoming games, and yeah, they have game card. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They have a Lego City Undercover game.
Oh yeah.
And then they have download software, which includes. Let's click on this link instead of looking at a sidebar here. Okay, let's see. Wait, what? Oh no. Okay, this includes everything. I was looking at it and I was wondering how this Fire Emblem game is coming out. February 2nd when the system's not out, but it's for smart devices apparently. I don't know what that means.
Me neither. I know they're doing some sort of integration with phones for like online access and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting though. Is that the first Fire Emblem game that's been on mobile?
I would assume so.
Oh, odd. Okay, so hold on. Let me count. So we've got Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I see no listing for that.
1-2 Switch. I'm just going off of their upcoming games site. You've got 1-2 Switch. You've got actually no, hold on. The first one I read was for the 3DS. That's why. Okay, so hold on. 1-2 Switch, Legend of Zelda, Just Dance 2017, Super Bomberman R. Really, Skylanders Imaginators is coming there. Okay. Rayman Legends is to be determined though. So that's
yeah. The people at Ubisoft told me that was coming, but I think it's coming out like way later in the year.
Yeah, it's odd. So yeah, I think the ones Just Dance. Just Dance as a launch title is so sad.
Well, when else were you going to do Just Dance 2017?
That's a good question.
Because it already came out for everything else, like back in November of 2016.
Yeah. I was looking at what other card games they have.
I think Puyo Puyo Tetris is going to... I don't know if it's going to be a launch title, but I think it'll be around there. Binding of Isaac, I know, is one of them.
It's interesting that they have some games that are coming out a month later, like the Mario Kart games coming out a month later.
Yeah, like how could you miss that window? But then again, I guess that's because they have nothing else in production, possibly, so they want to give you something that comes out just shortly afterwards, is my guess. That there's always a marketing strategy to stuff like this.
Yeah, they've had weird marketing strategies, though.
So, all right, now, you are not in a rush to get one of these things anytime soon. I did a live stream right after they did their stream where they were talking about, all the updates and stuff. I actually bought mine on the live stream from Best Buy. Got like $50 off because I had like, a bunch of coupons and gift cards and stuff. And I pre-ordered a bunch of games, and I was able to do that with Gamers Club Unlocked, and there was like this Visa checkout discount where I was getting every $100 you spend, you get $25 back. So I was saving a shit ton of money, and so I have a bunch of shit pre-ordered for like way less money, which I'm pretty happy about. And then I wanted to get that Pro controller, and I don't know if you heard, but they put the Pro controller up on Amazon, and it sold out in like 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, it's something ridiculous.
Yeah, and then they put it up on Best Buy, and Best Buy sold out in like 2 hours. I managed, lucky enough, to get one on Best Buy, And the funny thing about that is Best Buy randomly sent me a $10 gift card like right before that, so I just applied it to that. So I was like, fuck yeah. So
nice.
The Switch, even though it's expensive to do all this shit, I mean, personally, I know I've saved money left and right exploiting a bunch of weird little things, but it's, you know, I wish more people could figure out how to do stuff like that, because I'd like the Switch to be very successful, and I want people to get this thing like right from the get-go, because this could be Nintendo's last chance. Like, if we're just going to be honest about it, if they screw this up, I'm not going to say they're going to go out of business or anything like that. I know a lot of people think that's what that means, but I think they might abandon having their own hardware like off in a corner, you know?
Yeah, I do wonder what they're going to do. I don't see them just moving everything over to mobile devices. I also don't really see them moving their content just over to other consoles either.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
I don't really know what they do, because, you know, things like the Mario games and the Legend of Zelda I could see being on something else. The Mario ones, it seems so odd. But then again, I guess people would say that about Sonic from back when Sonic was on Sega hardware, and then boom, it appeared on everything else. They probably felt the same way, right?
Yeah, when he first popped up on the GameCube, you were like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was, and same with the Game Boy Advance. I think Sonic Advance was the first time he was on Nintendo hardware, and it was the same vibe. But, you know, ultimately it's a game, you know, and if it works in there, it works in there.
Very true.
I do think it's interesting that a large part of the Switch's upcoming life of games, like its lifespan of games, seem to all be like the Wii U's greatest hits. Not only, you know, the Nintendo stuff, but even like you mentioned that Lego City Undercover, like that was a third-party Wii U exclusive that people seem to have forgotten about. Now, not only is it coming to the Switch, I think it's already available for the Xbox One and PS4. It's just interesting to see how that those deals of exclusivity don't really mean shit.
Yeah, it is weird.
And I don't know if you noticed or knew about this, but like, so a lot of people thought when they showed all the Splatoon footage that they were going to be doing like a remaster of Splatoon. I didn't know it was actually going to be a sequel. Did you know that it's actually Splatoon 2?
No. To be honest, I've never played Splatoon, so I tended to tune that part out.
Splatoon might end up being the only like Nintendo franchise that was birthed from the Wii U that has any staying power. I mean, actually, just think of it. I'm not even sure there were any others.
Is it only for the Wii U?
Currently.
Interesting.
Yeah. But any other thoughts on the Switch?
I hope it does well. But even if it does well, I just don't really know where Nintendo would go next, even after that console, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the great, you know, $1 million question for the whole industry. Nobody really seems to know where that's going. But that's like its own subject that requires a lot of thought and process, because nobody knows. You know, I mean, Microsoft seems to be kind of banking on the Scorpio buying them a lot of time.
Yeah.
Sony seems to be banking on, you know, riding the continued success of the PS4 and just kind of hoping that doesn't go away. And Nintendo, they're Nintendo. They're just kind of hoping that what they make works.
Yeah, it's a weird spot in history. I'm trying to think if there's been a case like this in the past.
Where just the whole industry doesn't know what's coming?
Yeah.
If I were to this is going to sound weird because it's going to sound like I'm predicting doom and gloom here, which I'm not. But the closest thing I can think of is during the second video game generation when a lot of you had the Atari 2600, which was doing really well and stuff, and a lot of companies came along and said, like, we don't really know what we're going to do now. So they started making game consoles that were more advanced, but were still part of that same generation. And then even Atari made the 5200, which was in the same generation, but it was much more advanced than the 2600. And then nobody really understood where the direction of the industry was going, and it ended up confusing a lot of customers and end up ultimately resulting in a game crash. And I think the only parallels to that really is that we might have another situation where if the industry doesn't figure out where it's going, when it tries to push that on customers, that confusion could be very disruptive.
That's very true.
Yeah, that's but, you know, there's no like, well, this is what they have to do type of solution. It's more just like, I hope they figure it out so that they don't completely bury an industry accidentally.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think they'll figure some shit out. But yeah, as far as the Switch goes, any other final thoughts, or do you want to move on?
No, I think I'm good there.
All right, guys. Hopefully you got a Switch pre-ordered if you wanted one. Again, at the time most of you are hearing this, it's about to drop, so please let us know actually what you think of the Switch. Are you getting one, etc.? I'd like to know. But the next subject here is, Chip, you had this particular one. You wanted to talk about something that we just called gaming favorites. So the first, well, would you like to introduce this yourself, or do you want me to do this?
Go for it, Adam.
All right. So you wanted to talk about your favorite video game character first. So I guess the way we should do this is you should name your character, and you perhaps explain a little bit about why, because there's a bunch of these favorites things.
You
so
go first,
what was
Adam.
your favorite video game character?
After you, Adam.
All right. My favorite video game character, which a lot of people would probably expect me to say something like, oh, Ryo Hazuki, Shenmue. Like, actually, Ryo is not by any means my favorite character. I think my favorite character of all time is Sweet Tooth from the Twisted Metal franchise. I think he's a fascinating character. And back in the day, there was, I guess, Twisted Metal Black at one point was going to have a subsection where you could actually play as him in like a third-person type of ability. Because I've always found his story to be really fascinating, and he's just a very deep, obviously horrific character because he's like a ridiculous like serial killer. But I find his personality fascinating, kind of the same way you would find the Joker fascinating from the Batman lore. Mm-hmm. Kind of the same deal. And even the worst parts of Twisted Metal, Sweet Tooth was always kind of consistent as being good, although he was very goofy in the third and fourth game. But when he's handled correctly, he's a really awesome character, and he's kind of who comes to mind for me.
Gotcha.
How about you?
It's a tough one. I think if I remember back to my childhood, my favorite video game character from back then, that I'd say is still a pretty good one now. There's a character called Frog, very original name.
Yeah, totally.
From Chrono Trigger, one of the famous RPGs, probably one if not the most famous RPG for the Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
And I played the game as a kid, but I still liked. He had a pretty deep story in terms of, first you find this guy, he's a frog, but he also wields a sword, and he's like basically a knight in the medieval times, but he's a frog. And you're like, what's up with this? He's a frog. What is he doing? And then you find out all his backstory about how he was basically the assistant to this really famous knight who was like his best friend. They fought some evil magician dude, and the evil magician dude ended up killing his best friend and turning him into a frog. And he goes through this whole trial to become worthy for this magnificent sword, and ends up fighting and dueling against the wizard again. And it's a pretty interesting story. But his character, to me, the character they develop, the honesty and the chivalry that he has, was pretty inspiring as a kid. And overall, I just liked the character a lot from the franchise. So that one, and it kind of ties in with another character. Not ties in. It's kind of like a tie between that one and one other character who I don't really remember as well anymore because I haven't played the game in a while. Star Ocean, the second story, which I think was actually the first Star Ocean game released in the US. It's on the PlayStation. There was a character you could recruit who basically, I think he was like either a treasure hunter or just an explorer or something, but through some twisted accident, he got fused with these two dragons. So he basically had dragon heads coming out of his back or something. It was kind of weird. But he's a comical character, so I enjoyed him from that game. That would basically be it.
All right, not a bad answer. The next subject then would be favorite franchise. So I took this to mean just any game property that has at least 2 entries.
Yeah. Basically.
And so my answer is going to be really obvious here. It is actually Shenmue. Is hands down my favorite franchise. It's the one that gets me absolutely the most excited about new merchandise and new games and the lore and all that kind of stuff, and it just kind of really keeps me going. If you want an answer that is not that obvious from me, my second choice would actually be, and this is debatable whether or not it even counts, but I would say like the Star Wars universe, because Star Wars games, some of them are amazing, but granted, Star Wars is a film franchise first, a game franchise second.
Yeah, but I think it still counts.
If it counts, then that would be my second choice. might also put it on par as a tie. But yeah, I would have to give it to Shenmue ultimately, just because of how much that game universe actually means to me.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Or game franchise, sorry.
Yeah. Franchise for me would probably be Suikoden. The first 4 games I played, I'm still trying to find the 5th one. They've made some
spin-offs. What platform was the 5th one on?
PS2. They basically came out in the PS1, and then they kept going on the PS1 and then the PS2, and then they never made any more after that, except for some spin-offs that were a completely different universe, like on the 3DS. But it's still part of the franchise. I just haven't played those. But I definitely enjoyed the first 4 games in the franchise. I grew up with the first one on the PlayStation, and background-wise, Suikoden, you can recruit up to 108 characters in each game. Unique, different characters with their own kind of backstory and storyline, that kind of stuff. A lot of them not too fleshed out, but it's still just interesting. You know, your imagination kind of goes into who the person is, what they do. But had a lot of depth, and the game series was not about saving the world. It wasn't about you having some sort of superpowers, typically. It was more about you were a character who got involved in the political conflict between either internal struggles in your own country or between 2 countries, that kind of stuff. And so it made it fairly interesting to see the world get expanded. And the franchise itself was just fabulous in that sense, because the franchise had a lot of music CDs come out of them. In fact, I think there are more music CDs than there are games. But you know, they had jazz, they had piano, they had quite a few piano. They might have had a rock one or two or something. I can't even remember now. But I have quite a few of the music CDs. Cost me a bit to get them imported from Japan, because a lot of them never made it over to the U.S. But I think that made the series even more exciting to me, because there's just some sort of nostalgia about you're hearing a rendition of of songs from a video game series you really liked, but it's in another form that you still appreciate, but brings back memories. So that franchise had a lot of development in the music side, at least during its heyday. It's a shame that it's basically dead at this point. I think they disbanded the team. I'm trying to remember. I think Konami was the one behind it. I'm trying to remember.
Oh yeah, then it's
I always blame Konami for these things, but I think they were the ones behind it. But I have to go pick up one of the game discs or cases and see.
Dude, it's remarkable how similar everything you explained is, like, similar to Shenmue. I think we just have the same taste in franchises. It's just not the same exact franchise, because one of the things I love the most about Shenmue is it's like a realistic universe, and it's a guy dealing with like realistic things. At the same time, it has a heightened sense of significance, and there is a bit of otherworldly activity to it, but you don't know. It's subtle. It's not, super powerful man does something. And even going to the music, like, Shenmue is really renowned for how much work they put into the music, and it has more music CDs than it has games, and I had to import the damn music CDs. So It's very hauntingly similar how those experiences were.
Yeah, to be fair, Suikoden does have some superpowered people, and you have magic in the game. It's just that it's not the focus nearly as much as in certain games where, your character like walks in a building, it's like, oh, he's the chosen one, and he must defend the universe with his magic chosen powers. It's like, no, you're just a guy. You get wrapped up, and of course then you later become someone of more importance depending on the game, but it's still, you don't feel like you're the chosen one. You feel like more you get wrapped up in some of these adventures, such as the second game. You start off with your best friend, and you have both enlisted in the military as part of this young cadets military. But in fact, the young cadets military is actually a ploy, and we're basically all murdered to be the starting point for this war between these two countries, and basically breaking a truce they had or something. I'm trying to remember exactly what the plot was, but you and your best friend escape, and then later become rivals and get join separate sides of this political strife. So it's pretty interesting there.
Yeah, that's again, it's same deal. It's a guy who is just doing his thing, and he gets wrapped up in it, and he's not like specially destined necessarily to do that, although people will tell him he is later on. And then there's just hints of magic to it. Same deal, Shenmue.
Interesting.
Yeah, you should probably try that game. You might like it a lot.
Yeah, I've got it sitting there. I just need to play it.
Yeah, you even have the PAL versions. You're all set.
Yeah, still just need to play it one day.
I do want to do a bit of a side tangent here because I know a lot of people are asking about it since we are talking about Shenmue. A lot of people are thinking that the HD collection is going to come about because there was like a domain registration that recently happened. And I tried to explain to people, like, that's not a big deal. That's like standard business operations. Like, companies do that to protect their interests, not so much because they're working on anything. They just don't, if anything happens, they just want to make sure they're safe. It's kind of like filing patents for things you never end up making.
Tell me about it. I work for IBM. We do.
Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to address that since I know people will ask. But it is entirely possible we will see a Shenmue HD collection, entirely possible within this year, since presumably Shenmue 3 is, as weird as this sounds, is set to actually launch this year in 2017 at the end of the year, December. So if Sega has any desire to finish that project, they'll do it this year.
Here you go, folks.
Yeah. So now, moving on from that, the next subject here was favorite universe. And by that you mean like a universe, like if you had to live in it, right?
Basically, yeah. Yeah, if you had to live in that universe, which universe would you really want to live in terms of like the favorite one you'd be most excited to live in, you know, that kind of stuff.
Actually, no, wait, we skipped over one. There was favorite universe that you wouldn't necessarily want to live in. Maybe just visit or something. We had two. There was actually two.
Yeah, there were two. You have the one that says favorite gaming universe. What would it be? That's in front of.
Yeah, that's the second one. There was a one before that. My mistake. There's favorite universe that you would just want to just play in, I guess, if you could.
Okay.
As opposed to live in. Did you have? Do you have two different answers?
Let me think. Well, I mean, universe I'd love to play in again. It kind of just goes back to Suikoden because I really liked the original Suikoden universe, which unfortunately in the spin-off games, they were in another universe, so those don't really count. So I'd love to have games that I could actually play that were in that universe again, just to get more story from that area. Can't say I'd want to actually live in that universe, though, because it sounds like there's a lot of problems in different countries.
Yeah.
And a lot of people die.
We'll save that one. Save that one.
Yeah.
We're just talking about, right now we're talking about gaming universe.
Okay, go for it then. What's yours?
My favorite gaming universe would actually have to be the Super Mario World universe. I think that it's just visually fascinating to see, and it's very clear-cut as to, like, what's good, what's bad, et cetera, and I don't know, it just kind of it just embodies a fun gaming experience, and you know it's very colorful and it's exotic, and it would be a very interesting universe to play in, but I would not want to live in it.
There you go.
Yeah. So do you want to now talk about which gaming universe you would want to live in?
Actually, I think about this one for a second. Do you have an answer already?
I do have an answer. This one took me a while, and the reason is, even something like Super Mario where you're like, oh yeah, it sounds great, it'd be awesome to visit, blah blah blah, you really think about it, that place is like a hellhole nightmare. You'd never actually want to live there because there's just so much awful shit that happens so regularly. Like if you take even your favorite video game franchises, I bet you part of the reason those games are interesting is because there's so much drama and awful things happening in them, so you wouldn't want to be there. Like, I wouldn't want to live in the Shenmue universe because it's essentially just 1980s Japan. I don't speak Japanese, you know, like, there's no... And it's got, on top of that, it's just got a bunch of, like, weird things about it you wouldn't want to be there for. You know, I wouldn't want to live in the Twisted Metal universe. That place is hell where, like, and it's apocalyptic. You know, you wouldn't want to live in the Fallout universe or, you know, any of those places. For the most part, you're not going to want to actually be there. So I had to think long and hard about this, and it's not necessarily the best answer, but it's what I've got. I would want to live in the NBA 2K universe. And the reason for that is you'd be a pro basketball player who never ages, you're fucking amazing at your job, and you get paid like millions of dollars just to do that shit. So that would be my favorite universe, because essentially you just become a professional basketball player who is just really good for no reason. That would be, I mean, I guess it would apply to whatever your favorite sport is. But you know, if I was into football, that might be my answer, or hockey or whatever. But since I'm an NBA guy, I'll go with that.
Yes, for me that'd be something like Virtua Tennis.
There you go. It's gonna come down to sports universes because you're not gonna want to live in like these horrible universes.
It's very true. I was trying to think if there's a happy one. I mean, you have weird universes that have a bunch of mini games, like the Cooking Mama game or whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to live there. Fucking nightmare fuel anime characters everywhere.
I know, it's the thing, though. It's like, yeah, you go there, and it's like, you feel like you're going to get murdered any second, because creepy.
You got to
staring.
think about it like you're not just visiting there or whatever. You have to live in that and obey the rules of that universe. And it's like, ugh. For the most part, that would be awful in pretty much any video game context. Like, again, you think about your favorite games, your Resident Evils or your Call of Duties or whatever. The reason those games are good is because you don't have to live in them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you would go with Virtua Tennis?
Probably, because I tennis is my favorite sport. It's what I grew up playing. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. It's weird because I would actually be very curious to see what other people would say in the comments about that one. Like, is there a good gaming universe you would actually want to live in where it's not like a nightmare if you were to actually be there?
I guess you get some racing games, right? It's like some racing. You have some racing games where you're just racing through cities.
Yeah, but again, that's more like sports stuff again.
That's very true.
Yeah. Because even like the fantastical ones, like Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, I wouldn't want to live in that shit. Would you really want to live in the Star Wars universe?
No way, no way.
Yeah, exactly. It's always there's death and murder. There's an evil empire. Like, it's awful. You don't want to live there.
Pretty terrible.
So now it brings me to the next question then, and I just popped this one here on the fly. Which universe would you like to most avoid? Like, if you had to get transferred into a video game universe for whatever reason, what's the one where you absolutely would not want to go to it?
There's so many. It's ridiculous.
I know. That's why it takes some thought. You take a second, you think about it. My answer, Silent Hill. Silent Hill, at least the first game on the PS1, was the only game that to this day still is like, oh, that's really freaking me out. Like, it's legitimately terrifying. And like, if there's one place I would never want to go, it would be the Silent Hill universe, because I'd just be like, fuck it. As soon as I find that gun, I'll just kill myself. Like, I don't want to try and go through this. This is horrible. So that would be my answer, the Silent Hill universe.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one.
My assumption is it would come down to horror games.
Yeah, a lot of them. Because you go with Resident Evil. I mean, those things just murder everyone in sight.
Yeah, the Resident Evil universe would be a horrible place to be.
But there's also what is it called? Right now I have Typing of the Dead in my head.
Well, you mean House of the Dead, right?
House of the Dead. There we go.
Another zombie thing. Like, that would be a terrible place to be. That one would be bad because it would also have really bad voice acting.
I know. So you'd be pissed off at anyone that talks to you.
Yeah.
Oh man, so those two are pretty bad. You have some more modern games, like you have all the what are they called, Amnesia, whatever those games are.
Yeah, and things like Slender Man
and Dead Space.
7 Days to Die, and really like Fallout, Skyrim. Like anything really would be awful to be in.
Yeah, I feel like even though Resident Evil is scary and House of the Dead is scary, Dead Space is worse, because those things look like they are just killing machines compared to some of the zombies where you're just like, okay, I can just kind of run around some of them, or just they get quarantined in certain sections, or at least humans have things under control in parts of Resident Evil. You have bioterrorist outbreaks occasionally, but you have like the BSAA and all that kind of stuff trying to control things. House of the Dead, I don't know, that's just a wacky universe, but
yeah.
But Dead Space, it literally felt like wherever you went, things were just starting to break down, where just those necromorphs are coming out of the woodwork everywhere, and this like as soon as you even heard of a necromorph outbreak, you're basically dead on whatever planet or colony or wherever you're on, because they're just basically gonna maul everything and then turn you into one of them. And I feel like you had less hope against those things unless you were like a super powered engineer, Isaac Clarke character. You basically wouldn't last more than like a couple of seconds.
There you go.
So
horrible fucking universes you never want to go to.
Would not want to live there. Even if the technology is great, it wouldn't matter because you'd be just torn apart by necromorphs.
Yeah, that same thing would be going, like, this is again crossing movie franchises, but like, Alien Isolation, that game that came out like a few years ago, like that'd be fucking horrible. I wouldn't want to go there because you have to deal with the aliens.
Oh, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, there's so many fucking amazing game universes that you would just never, ever, ever want to go to.
All
any other thoughts on any of your favorites or places to avoid or anything like that from game universes? Any game universe questions, really?
Well, I did like the Mega Man Legends universe, or that franchise, actually. Mm-hmm. Not wanting to live there, even though actually that wasn't too bad of a place to go live, when I think about it. Of course, if you're afraid of the anime characters, that may be a little bit worse. But you had a lot of townspeople that were pretty happy and fine living around in various places. But I guess I'd be one of those and have my house blown up occasionally and be like, "You darn robot treasure hunters, and you're blowing up machines." But
it's all obviously hypothetical and fantastical, but you have to wonder if those world's rules would apply to you. Like, you know, if you died, you come back with like 2 more lives or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a civilian, so I wouldn't die. I just get burned and then run around going, "Ow, I'm burned," and then you just instantly heal up a couple of seconds later. Kind of weird.
Well, I don't mean just in Mega Man Legends. I mean like in anything. If you went to the Mario universe, can you die 3 times? I mean, like, it'd be curious. That sounds like a premise for like a really bad video game movie, like Pixels 2, you know, or some shit.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Never saw the first one.
You saw it?
Never saw it.
Oh, I never saw it. No. I've seen many reviews on it that'll say it's like one of the worst films of all time, which doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it looked pretty bad. It looks like, hey, let's just try to, people that play video games are stupid, right? Let's make them watch this movie. It's like, what? No. No.
Shame.
Yeah, actually, see, the Mega Man Legends is a franchise that I really enjoy as well, and a universe that I enjoyed. It's a shame that its 3rd game got canceled as well, but oh well.
Rules of 3, man. A lot of times, fan favorites, 3rd game just gets killed off.
Apparently.
Shenmue got lucky. We got really lucky.
Hey, Mega Man Legends could come back. I mean,
it could. Capcom is finally wising up a bit.
If they ever did that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, as a company, they're finally realizing, like, oh, people liked Resident Evil when it was good. Maybe we should just make good Resident Evil games.
Yeah, I know.
We'll shift into that in a bit. But first, if we have nothing else on this universe talk, do you?
Nope.
All right, then I want to give a quick shout-out to a guy named Colin. He is a Patreon backer who is at the level in which he can get a shout-out. So thank you, Colin, for supporting the podcast and the channel. I really appreciate it, dude. You are awesome.
You're the
Anything
best,
to say to Colin?
Colin's the best.
Colin is the best. Thank you, Colin. And speaking of, again, backers, we have another one. This is a new subject. This comes from Corey Marsh, who is also a Patreon backer, obviously, and he gets to select a subject each month. And then this is what he came up with, and I thought this was kind of an interesting one. He wanted us to talk about 7th gen games that have been migrated to the 8th generation, remasters and stuff, and like basically just talk about some of our favorite ones.
Remind me of the 7th and 8th generations. Which ones were those?
So 7th gen was the Wii, the PS3, and the 360. 8th gen is the Wii U, the Xbox One, and PS4, and debatably PS4 Pro, Scorpio, and Switch, but that's a different discussion. So basically, some examples of games would be, like the Prototype 1 and 2 were made for the 360 and PS3, and now they've been slightly upgraded and whatever and re-released on the 8th gen. Although I hear that specific one, there's more errors in the remaster than there were in the original version. So that would be an example of a bad remaster.
Oh dear.
Yeah. I can actually, what comes to mind quicker is bad ones. I mean, it's not the same thing, but like I know Silent Hill 2 and 3, when they were ported from the PS2/OG Xbox to the 360 PS3, they used out-of-date code for those games, and they released buggier, incomplete versions, and the remaster team understood the games themselves so poorly, they were removing things that they thought were errors when it was stylistic choices, like the fog that's in those games to make it horrific. They took the fog out thinking, oh, it's high def, so you don't need fog. Stuff like that. So those are examples of terrible ones.
That wasn't a 360 to Xbox One or...
No. That was 6th to 7th. So and that was bad as well. So we want good ones that are examples from the 7th to the 8th gen.
Wasn't Last of Us? Didn't that get good reviews for its?
Yes, Last of Us is a perfect example. It came out on the PS3 and it was like highly acclaimed there, and then it was re-released for the PS4, I believe, with the DLC and stuff all on disc and remastered and all that. And then the remaster was highly received as well. Yes.
Okay, so there you go.
So. Last of Us, unfortunately, the game still I have not gotten around to playing, sadly. I do know that there was a phase there when that game was announced and a bunch of other remasters were announced where people were really pissed off about remasters. First of all, let me address that. The secret with remasters is you don't have to buy them. It's completely optional. Ooh. You don't have to pick them up if you don't want to. But the plus is if they're handled correctly, unlike, say, Prototype or Silent Hill, You get a lot of additional benefits out of it. You know, patches and stuff are all on the disc. DLC is usually included, and it's usually beneficial. It takes advantage of the new hardware, as was the case with something like The Last of Us. But it has additional benefits with, say, The Last of Us, where the PS3 was not a juggernaut seller. It didn't do nearly as well as the 360 did, at least initially. I know it ultimately kind of caught up because in Japan it picked up there, whereas the 360 had no shot in hell in Japan. But the point is, a lot of people who had 360s in the 7th gen but decided to buy PS4s in the 8th gen never had a chance to play Last of Us. So it opened the door to a bunch of new gamers that could try that game, and they could try a better version of the game. But that's an exclusive situation. If we're thinking about a game that was good to begin with, and then they slightly improved it and just kind of re-released it, my favorite would actually probably be the BioShock collection. 2K put out BioShock 1, 2, and BioShock Infinite from the 360/PS3 over to the Xbox One/PS4. And what they did with it basically was that they slightly improved BioShock 2. They basically ran BioShock Infinite at maximum PC settings for the home consoles. And the only thing they really did a lot of work on was BioShock 1. They did a lot of work to upgrade the textures and all that stuff. And I played a lot of those, and I thought those worked really well. So if you wanted me to say what my favorite one was and what the best deal for your money is, BioShock Collection. All 3 of those games, all the DLC, big upgrades, etc. And 2K, to their credit, was cool enough that if you had bought the PC version of BioShock 1, it just updated it with a patch that was completely free.
There you go.
Yeah. Do you have any other examples that you could think of that you think would be good?
No, to be honest, I mean, I don't own a PS4 or Xbox One, so I don't really...
That would do it then.
Yeah, I don't really know about any of the remasters other than just hearing about occasional ones like Last of Us, and I've never played any of the remasters because I don't own the systems, so I can't really tell you.
Yeah, there's some where I kind of scratch my head, like God of War 3 with Sony put out for the PS4. You know, they could have done a God of War collection. That would have been really good. I would have supported that. But God of War 3 by itself just seemed kind of half-assed. And from what I remember, it's a better version, but not by much. I know Ubisoft put out an Assassin's Creed collection, but it was like the Ezio collection, so it only included some of the games, which was an odd choice. Whereas like a whole Assassin's Creed collection probably would have been much more interesting.
Yeah.
It's for reasons like that I think the BioShock collection was like a perfect thing, because it had all 3 games, all the deals, like everything BioShock was there. Nothing was missing. And I appreciated that with additional improvements, especially if you're a console player. But yeah, there's definitely been some odd ones over time, but I'm trying to think of other examples of really good ones. I know, like you said, Last of Us is a great example. BioShock collection, as I keep saying. Odd one, I know that the Lego Harry Potter games for the PS3 and 360 were remastered and re-released together, but only for the PS4, which was kind of strange. The Lego stuff isn't usually exclusive content.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing immediately is coming to mind. I'm sure if I went over and like looked at my collection, I could come up with answers, but that's what comes to mind. And nothing else for you?
No. The Last of Us is really the only one I know of.
Yeah, there were a bunch for the PS4 because they basically, Sony took a lot of the PS3's greatest hits. Like the Uncharted collection. That's a perfect example of a good one. They took Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, combined them all together, gave you all the DLC, all the patches, and etc., and they put it all into one compilation for the PS4, and it's pretty cheap too. That's a good example. Another one. My favorite remasters are usually like that, where there's a lot of bang for your buck, and then they're, usually definitive editions and all that kind of shit. So those would be, I guess, the examples that come to mind. BioShock collection and the Uncharted collection. Collections.
There you go. Collections.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, Corey, for that. And now moving on, I believe, unless you come up with something else, man, we got one subject left, which is going to nicely tie together with what we were talking about before. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. So at the time that we record this, Resident Evil 6, the movie, which would be Resident Evil, the final chapter, and Resident Evil 7, the game, both just dropped. Now, I just wanted to talk about the fact that we live in a world where the 6th Resident Evil movie is a real thing, that actually happened. And it's now, if you think about it, Resident Evil as a film franchise has been active for over 15 years. Do you realize that?
When did the first one come out? 2001?
2002.
2002, okay.
Isn't that... Like, when I first thought about that, that blew my mind. First of all, because it made me feel a lot older. That means half my life, there has been a Resident Evil film franchise. And it's been actively going. And you've ever seen those movies?
Yeah, I've seen the first 2, 3. I can't remember if I've seen the third one.
They're definitely in that it's so unbelievably bad that it's good type of thing, like that group. It's kind of fun to watch them all back to back, but there will come a point, usually around the fourth one, where you start to break a little. Because it's like, oh god, this is still a thing. Because those movies never really go anywhere, and one thing that's kind of amazing about them is that they really do try to connect to the previous movies. Like, they end and they just pick up right where they left off, even if it's, no matter how absurd the scenario is they set up, they'll play through it in perhaps a ridiculous way. Those movies just know what they are. They just know how stupid they are, and they just roll with it. And I gotta give them props for that. But it's funny to think that, you know, maybe eventually, if any film historian's ever going to look back on them, because I think they're supposed to take place over the course of like a year or something like that, when you really break them down, to think that it actually took a film studio 15 years to produce this saga is just going to be kind of amazing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I found the first... I can still remember watching the first movie. Actually, Adam and I were mentioning this. I can't remember if we were mentioning this before recording or during the recording. I've already blanked out, but how neither of us had watched any of these movies in theaters, right? We'd always watched them.
No, I've never seen one in theaters, no.
Yeah. I can remember watching the first one. Did I have a DVD of it? I can't remember if I had a DVD or if I just watched it on a computer. It's a couple of years after it came out. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of weird. It wasn't the best movie. But I'm a sucker for zombie movies. It took a while for the zombies to show up. I think the first half the movie they were just kind of there were no zombies, and then later they just suddenly showed up. But the first one to me was the one that was the most not realistic, but it had the most potential.
It was the most grounded.
Most grounded, sure. It had the most potential to actually be a movie that was not ridiculous. And then after they realized the first one, it was like, okay, people just liked it for being ridiculous. It just kept going and getting more and more ridiculous. Like, I remember one of the movies, I don't know if it was the third one or the second one or the fourth one, I don't know which one this was. They were like in a desert for some reason, driving a bus.
Yeah, I think that was the third or fourth one. Yeah,
it's like a school bus, and like crows killed people at one point or something.
Yeah, that was the third one.
That was the third one, okay.
Extinction.
And then they were like, I can't remember if this is in the same movie they were doing in parallel or what, but they were trying to clone the main character from the first movie.
They were trying to clone Alice, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like they had her running through the same scenario and she kept dying and they kept throwing the bodies somewhere. It was so weird. Is that all to take place in 1 year? Are you serious?
Well, it clearly all takes place within a short time span. Like that... Because she's not really supposed to age much, and it just seems like it keeps, like, they just kind of go from one thing to the next thing. Like, when you watch those movies back to back to back, like, there's not supposed to be that much time that takes place in between them. So, generally. So, I think the biggest time skip is between the second and third movie, when, at the end of the second movie, the city is, like, completely destroyed, and there's, the zombies are out. And then the beginning of the third movie, like, the whole world has been destroyed. There's, like, no water left or whatever. And that, when you watch that one, you should think, oh, okay, I guess this is where it has to end because the whole world has died off. But then you watch the fourth one, it's like, oh, I guess the world just has grass again for some reason. Like, because they clearly didn't think it was going to keep going.
Yeah. The third one was so weird.
Yeah. I'm kind of pulling up the wiki on it just to double check and make sure we have all the right movies in the right order here. But so Resident Evil Extinction is, I believe, it's the desert one. That's the one you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then Afterlife is where she starts off having, like, superpowers, and then she loses them immediately at the beginning, and then, like, they fight the guy on the boat. And then Retribution, which is the one I think I've only seen once, that came out like 4 years ago. That was the weird one that was like inside of this like virtual simulator thing. The interesting thing about these movies is you mentioned that the zombies take forever to show up, right? Resident Evil has been active as a film franchise for so long that it predates when zombies got popular again, like with The Walking Dead and all that stuff.
Oh, by far, yeah.
So the interesting thing is when they were making those first few movies, they're like, nobody really cares about the zombies. They're kind of just background noise. And then when they realized, hey, we're an active franchise and zombies are popular now, they suddenly started throwing them everywhere. And I think that was about the time when they did the last one with Retribution, where she was in the simulator and stuff. So all of a sudden, the zombies are really important. And I'm curious, because I haven't seen the final chapter, which everybody's kind of joking about how it's probably not really the final chapter.
They have to match the same number of games. So now there's a 7th Resident Evil game. They have to make a 7th movie.
Exactly. So I'm sure it'll happen at some point. But yeah, it's just, I'm curious to see how significant the zombies are in that one. Although from what early reviews and stuff that I've seen, people say this one is absolutely atrocious. But I'm like, well, yes, but they always were. So like, I have zero expectations of this film. But I do want to see it just for the quirkiness. Because even though video game movies obviously still have like a terrible stigma to them, because they're usually, and pretty much deservedly so, because they mostly suck, we are getting to a point where I think video game movies are going to be taken more seriously, and there'll probably be a good one at some point that blows open the industry, kind of like X-Men did for comic book movies. And Resident Evil, at least this movie, kind of is this weird throwback where it's still around, even though we've basically moved past the concept of the shitty, cheesy video game movie. Or at least we would have hoped to by now.
We would have hoped to, but I mean, didn't they just have like a...
the Assassin's Creed movie apparently was terrible.
That was terrible, and they also had a Hitman movie, didn't they?
Yeah, they've had a few of those.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, but I guess
okay.
what I'm saying is, I keep thinking that video game movies are... This might just be more on me as opposed to a whole thing, but like, I keep thinking that video game movies are going to blow up at some point. And it's just interesting to see that there is this one video game movie franchise that still hasn't apologized for what it is. It just keeps going, and it gives you exactly what you think it's going to give you. It's not like an Uwe Boll movie where it like actively hurts to watch. Like all his terrible films, like House of the Dead and Alone in the Dark and all those.
I remember I watched one of the I think it was House of the Dead 2 or something. It was some movie where basically they had to call themselves, I can't remember what one was called, Nighthawk or something, and they were going to a college campus.
Yeah, that was House of the Dead 2.
Yeah, and it was so bad. It was so bad, but I couldn't stop watching.
Yeah, I know. Fun fact about that one, first of all, hey everybody, did you know there's a House of the Dead 2? Because most people have no idea.
Okay, there you go, folks.
Now, the funny thing about that, though, is that, so that first one was a train wreck of a film, right? Like, it was awful. Uwe Boll made it. The second one, Uwe Boll didn't even make that movie, and like nobody from the original cast wanted to come back for it, except for this. There was a character in the first one named Casper, who was like a police officer, far and away the single worst actress or actor in that first film, and she, spoilers, dies in the first movie, but for some reason she's in the second one and is alive.
Huh.
No explanation as to really like how, but she's in the movie, and I'm like, that's the only person you got back. One of the only people that made no sense at all to bring back.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, there's some really bad video game movies out there, and I think it's just kind of funny that we're still kind of doing this with video game movies. But you did mention Resident Evil 7, and perhaps that is a reason we need a 7th Resident Evil movie. Now, Resident Evil 7, haven't played it yet. I really want to. I was surprised because everyone is talking about how absolutely fantastic this game is.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Have you played it?
A little bit of it, yeah.
I'm impressed, man. Like, yeah, I was kind of, now I regret it. I was considering buying it when I was, basically exploiting all these Best Buy deals, but I was like, I'll wait. It's whatever. Haven't been impressed by Resident Evil in a long time, and now I massively regret that decision because, Capcom really screwed up Resident Evil by taking it in all these weird directions. Personally, I haven't really enjoyed a Resident Evil since whatever was right before Resident Evil 4. Like, Resident Evil 4 people really like. I never really got into it. And then 5 and 6 I never cared. Although I hear the Revelations games are actually pretty good. But, yeah, supposedly Resident Evil 7 is phenomenal. So I'm disappointed in my lack of purchase.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It brought, from what I've played so far, and I'll try not to spoil anything, but just in case, spoiler warnings if you want to avoid
spoilers.
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to hit any, though. I'm just going to try to describe the game itself. They brought back the horror element to the series that it was lacking to me. The fourth one still had a little bit of horror to it, but it wasn't as much as people were claiming it was in the first two, at least. The third one... Was the third one when you had like that guy running around saying stars all the time and trying to kill all the stars?
like that game.
So those were the first three. The fourth one, went in the whole action survival horror type deal.
You're skipping over a couple though. You're skipping over Code Veronica and stuff.
I'm skipping over I'm going off the main series, not.
So,
not
can I tell you a little side story about how that's not technically accurate?
Okay,
so,
go ahead.
Code Veronica was in development as Resident Evil 3, and that was the intention, was to release it that way. But and Capcom had every desire to make it for the Dreamcast because they were using the newer hardware. But they had realized they had made some sort of deal with Sony which required them to make a Resident Evil 3 for the PlayStation. And they were like, well, fuck, because they could not get Code Veronica to run on the PS1. It was a next-gen game. So they actually took a side project they had been working on similar to Resident Evil Survivor. They just called it Resident Evil 3 and then slapped it on the PS1.
Huh.
So there you go.
I mean, I played... is the Code Veronica one the one with the guy named...
it's where Claire has like her own game.
Claire has her own game, and I can't remember if she's with the guy named Billy or Steve or something. And...
No, that's Resident Evil 0.
Well, no, not the escaped convict. There's like another person that Claire is with, and he ends up dying at the end or something.
God, I don't remember. That might be it.
He gets mutated, or I can't remember what it is, but...
Yeah, that's probably Code Veronica, yeah.
Yeah. No, I played it a while ago. I can't remember what I played it on, though.
It's been ported to a lot of things since. It was originally made for the Dreamcast. It was put on the PS2. It was put on the GameCube. There were like HD versions released digitally for like PS3 and 360, I think.
I might have played on the
I think
Dreamcast.
that's where it ended, though. I don't think they've re-released it since.
Yeah. But anyway, so regardless of which one was the actual Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 4 was kind of the departure from the classic style. Had the action horror. I still found it scary. I actually played it on the Wii, believe it or not, which I actually found to be more fun. One of the times where I actually enjoyed using using the controller because I used it almost like a light gun type thing, and I actually found that pretty interesting because I get jump scared so often I'd start missing constantly because my hand would flail around trying to shoot something, right? But that game definitely wasn't scary on the level of Dead Space or one of those games. It was just, okay. They took away zombies. That was the main problem. They got rid of zombies and they added these weird parasite people in Resident Evil 4 and 5.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
In 6, they tried to come back to what they thought was what people wanted, which is that people wanted zombies. But they tried to do this weird split where they had a horror element, an action element, and then I don't even know what the other element was. But they had like 3 campaigns. I don't know if you ever played Resident Evil 6.
No.
So they had 3 campaigns. They had one with Leon S. Kennedy from Resident Evil 2 and 4. They had one with a girl named Sherry and apparently Albert Wesker's son. And that was... Apparently Sherry was the girl that was saved in Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, Sherry Baskin or whatever it was.
Yeah, and I never actually finished it, but I think you also play as Chris Redfield and some other person in the 3rd campaign. And the Leon one, they tried to be scary, but it still had too much action in it. And it almost felt like the game was unfinished or just not polished. Because you'd have examples of some monster chasing you and sprinting towards you. And you shoot with a magnum, and then it had this really bad animation of suddenly doing a backflip. Like it got shot, right? It was things like that. Things like an ambulance bursting out of nowhere. Like no one apparently could drive in that game. Like everyone was on fire, bursting through, and you had to do quick time events all the time to dodge them, and it sucked. And now the Leon campaign, from what I've heard, is the best of the 3 parts of that. Actually, I think there's an Ada Wong part as well, which Ada Wong is another story in terms of the weird plot. But basically, they threw like a mixture of like we don't know what kind of plot we want to go with. We're just gonna make everyone be even older, and just have a new zombie outbreak again. And it felt forced, and it felt like they didn't really have a direction, right? Whereas with the 7th one that I've played so far, it's interesting. Have you haven't played it, but have you?
No.
Have you seen many of the trailers or gameplay footage?
I've read many reviews on it.
Okay.
People just massively disappointed by it for saying all the things you're saying. It was like
of
they thought
Resident
they were
Evil
making
6.
Call of Duty with Resident Evil characters, sort of.
Of Resident Evil 6.
Yes.
Right. Now, what about Resident Evil 7?
No, that I've only heard that it's fucking amazing, and a lot of people are like too afraid to play it, especially with like PSVR and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in, because I scream like a little girl when I get afraid, but I still enjoy scary stuff. I just scream constantly. So if you don't want to hear screaming constantly, don't play a scary game with me. But anyway, when I first saw gameplay, like the demo they had for Resident Evil 7, did you get to play the demo at all?
No.
So it was weird because you basically were in a house trying to figure out what's going on. You end up also finding you also experience the house from like this news crew or this investigative crew that's going in, and bad things happen to them. But it feels very much like an exploring game, as like an Amnesia or one of those where you don't do any action or anything like that. You just kind of run away from things. So when I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, but it really feels like they're just trying to bank on the interest people had in Amnesia and a lot of those what I like to call runaway horror games, where you can't really do anything, you just have to run away and hide, because basically no matter what you do, these monsters will just destroy you if they catch you, right? And Resident Evil 7, thankfully to me, is not entirely a run away and hide game. You do run away and hide, but you actually do have some action, and you have some combat, but it's also not ridiculous action and combat, and you're not like a super well-trained operative or a man with giant biceps like Chris Redfield who can punch a zombie in the face and it dies. You're like a normal civilian. There are some moments that still broke the immersion for me, but it's very, very well done in my opinion. And if this is the direction that people were wanting it to go, which it sounds like it was, I think it's a good direction for them to head.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Because they have to make up for that other Resident Evil game that nobody remembers. You ever play that? I think it was because it never came out here except for like digital versions. Biohazard or Resident Evil Umbrella Corps. Did you ever play that?
Was that the online game?
Yeah, it was like this weird Rainbow Six Siege style game with the Resident Evil license. Angry Joe made it like his, I think, second or first worst game of the year.
Wasn't that
for
where
last
people
year?
basically said it was just like a Call of Duty game or something online, except for they just kind of threw like zombie-like things that would occasionally get in your way?
Yeah, it was a completely unfinished game apparently. But the funny thing about it is, it was actually, if you are interested enough in Resident Evil to just pick stuff up, they did give it a physical PS4 release in Hong Kong only.
Huh.
It's in English, but you can get it.
It's so bizarre.
So there you go. As far as other good recommendations, apparently the Resident Evil Revelations games, particularly the first one, is supposed to be really good. So I've wanted to play that one too. Just never got around to it.
Let's see. Have I played this? I feel like I haven't. Oh, no, I did play part of the first one. It wasn't bad. I think it felt more like a Resident Evil 5 style game. They tried to throw in some horror, a little bit of it, but it definitely felt more of like an action horror game. But it's still much better than 6. 6 was dreadful.
I'll trust you because I don't know.
And if you like if you like action games, I think you'll also like that one. I have not played the second one though. I pulled up the first one to see, and I can see Jill Valentine in it. So yeah, I remember that one.
Cool. You did play Resident Evil 0 though, right?
For the GameCube, I think.
Yeah. You got to get the HD remasters, kind of going back to that. They remastered those Resident Evil, the GameCube remake, and Resident Evil 0 for the Xbox One and PS4.
I don't have those systems.
Fuck. All right.
Exactly.
Well, then with that, I want to say thank you, Chip, for joining me on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for letting
always.
me be here.
Yes, thank you again. And thank you, Corey. Thank you, Colin. And thank you guys for listening. If you have any interest in getting this early, you can back it on Patreon. I've actually added a new Patreon perk. I don't know if you know about this, Chip. If you are at tier of $5 or above, which is the same one where you get the podcast, you now get early access to videos.
Yay!
Yes. Yeah, because actually the truth behind that is because a lot of times, I'm not home. I know, big surprise, right? So I have to do videos like in bulk, and then I'll just kind of upload them and let them release like with a, an automatic schedule. But because of that, they are just sitting there doing nothing for a long period of time. So if you want to get early access, you can do that now. I'll release them early. So there you go.
So back at them. Get those early releases.
Thank you. Any final thoughts for the good folks, Chip?
Get Resident Evil 7. If you like scary games, it's a good one.
Excellent. And probably don't go see Resident Evil 6.
I'm still going to watch it.
Oh, I'm going to see it too, just not in theaters.
It's not in theaters. Is it actually in theaters, or was it direct to...
No, it's in theaters.
Have they all been in theaters?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Now, okay, before we go,
yes.
This, so people are aware, there's also another 3D animated film coming out for Resident Evil called Resident Evil Vendetta.
Mm-hmm.
I think, let me pull it up. It looks like they say it's coming out in Japan in May 27th, 2017. I don't know when they will have an English release, although I think they've already got the guy that played Leon S. Kennedy. They've already got his voice actor lined up for the U.S. or English release.
Nice.
But I don't know when. But yeah, that's actually what I got confused about when you were talking about Resident Evil 6 movie. Because I assumed that you're talking about a movie that was basically set in the same universe as Resident Evil 6 and the earlier ones, and that's this movie. So it's going to have your favorite characters from the original franchise, which Resident Evil 7, this is part of the spoiler, may or may not be set in the same universe. It's hard to tell at this point. There are clues for both ways, so you can't really tell if it's the same universe or if it's a different universe. So
I was just looking up the budget and box office for these 6 films. Would you like to take a wild guess what the budget for these 6 films was?
Collectively?
Yes.
I'm going to go with 100 million.
Okay, a little bit higher.
Okay, I'm going to go with 300 million.
Just under, like a hair under.
Okay, 280 million.
Hair over.
Oh. Wait, a hair over of
Go hair
million?
higher.
Okay. 285 million.
290.
290.
290. Okay. You want to take a wild guess at what they've earned collectively? Keep in mind, obviously, that the 6th one has just come out, so this number will change.
They've got to at least... Well, actually, I don't know how much the 6th one costs compared to the rest of them. I mean, they have to have a justification to keep making these movies. If they weren't bringing in a decent amount, they wouldn't keep making them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with. Well, you always say to double the number because of marketing, right?
Yeah, although I don't know where exactly they're getting this particular figure from, but I would guess that you have to. But then again, those Resident Evil movies never seem to be marketed particularly well.
Well, I mean, I didn't even know there was a 6th one coming out.
Exactly my point. Exactly my point. So I don't know what they spend on marketing, but traditionally you're correct. You would just double the number. So if you want to say that they really spent like 575 million, something like that, on the movies in total, then that would be a fair assessment.
I'm gonna go with 600 million.
You're gonna go with they've grossed 600 million.
Yes.
Okay. The answer is 994 million. It's just close to
Wow.
$1 billion franchise, and I would guarantee this 6th movie will push it over to $1 billion franchise.
Wow, that's impressive.
So there you go. They've made roughly about $400 million in profit on this franchise. If, again, we go with the doubling of the production budget.
So there you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. Hope to hear from you again next month. Please leave comments in the comment section, and we'll see you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.